What's trending in true crime? An Indiana community is asking for a change in the child welfare system after a 5-year-old girl was allegedly starved to death.
3 people who were supposed to take care of a 5-year-old girl are tonight accused of torturing her, leading to her death.
Investigators say that Kinsleigh Welty died of malnourishment, and today her mom, her mom's boyfriend, and her grandmother all face a judge in the case for the very first time.
She was only 5 years old. When authorities stepped into that home on April 9, 2024, they weren't expecting what came next. They had come to check on a newborn child. Instead, they uncovered something far more troubling, something hidden in plain sight. In one of the rooms, they found a door. On the other side was a small, enclosed space where a little girl had been spending most of her life. A space no child should have ever seen, let alone lived in. The air was heavy, the walls were marked. There were signs that this place had been used not just as a room, but as a barrier, cutting a child off from the rest of the world. And behind that door was the truth they could no longer ignore. Her name was Kinsleigh Welty, and the people responsible for what happened to her weren't strangers. They weren't unknown threats lurking in the shadows. They were the people who should have protected her. Her own mother, Tony McClure, her mother's boyfriend, Ryan Smith, and her maternal grandmother, Tammy Holly. This was not a case of sudden danger. It was a slow, quiet descent, marked by warnings, mischances, and decisions that allowed it to continue for far too long. The child protection system had been involved, reports had been made, but somehow it still ended here. This documentary follows the timeline of what led to that final day, from early concerns to repeated removals and returns, from relatives who begged for help to institutions that turned away, and from silence to discovery, to the moment a community finally understood what had been happening behind that door. What you're about to watch contains real details from a verified case. While care has been taken to present this with respect and responsibility, the content may be emotionally difficult to process. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're new to the channel, we invite you to subscribe and share where you're watching from. And to our returning viewers, your support helps bring light to stories that deserve to be told. Thank you for helping us keep these voices from being forgotten. Now, let's get back to this case. Kinsleigh Welty was born on December 3, 2018 in Mooresville, Indiana. In the early years, those who saw her described a child full of energy, laughter, and curiosity. She had bright eyes, a wide smile, and a soft voice that often carried the lyrics of Taylor Swift songs around the house. Her favorite shows were simple ones, colorful, musical, and made for children who still believed the world was a safe place. She didn't have much, but what she had, she cherished. Dress-up days, cartoons on the couch, the kind of ordinary moments that most children experience without fear. Her paternal grandparents, Tricia and Brian Welty, remembered those times vividly. To them, Kinsleigh was not just a child. They saw her as someone they needed to protect. They opened their home to her more than once, hoping it would be permanent. Her biological parents, Tony McClure and Bradley Welty, had a rocky path. The relationship had been marked by instability, but for a brief time it seemed the system had stepped in. In January 2019, when Kinsleigh was just 3 weeks old, the Indiana Department of Child Services began their first investigation. A wellness call led caseworkers to her family's home in Morgan County. What they found prompted immediate action. The environment was assessed as unsuitable, and both parents were taken into custody for endangering their children's well-being. Tony McClure, Kinsleigh's mother, was later convicted for endangering a dependent. She served only 21 days before being released on probation. During that time, Kinsleigh was placed with a foster parent who grew attached to her quickly. The caregiver later shared her hope to adopt the child, but that process was halted. Indiana law, like many states, emphasizes reunification with biological parents, an approach designed to give families a second chance, even when that path may come with risk. Following Toni's release, DCS returned Kinsley to her care. But concerns didn't end there. More reports followed, and Kinsley was again removed, this time placed with her paternal grandparents, Tricia and Brian Welty. They described Kinsley as more active, more expressive, and showing signs of emotional comfort during her time with them. Still, the pattern continued. Kinsley was sent back to her mother once again. Tricia Welty later spoke publicly, stating she should have never been given back to her. The sentiment wasn't hers alone. Other family members and concerned observers had raised red flags. There were documented concerns that were never fully acted upon. With each return, Kinsley was placed back into a situation that had already raised serious questions, and with every decision to reunite, those questions were left unanswered. By early 2023, Kinsley's father, Bradley Welty, was no longer a part of her life. Their connection had faded over time. The relationship between Bradley and Toni McClure had ended years prior, and there was no record of him maintaining active custody or regular visitation. Officials later confirmed he had not seen his daughter in a considerable amount of time. That same year, Toni began living with 27-year-old Ryan Smith. He moved into the household, which soon included 6 children. The environment grew crowded and difficult to manage, according to family members. Despite this, the arrangement was allowed to continue. Relatives began to notice shifts. Kinsley's behavior changed. Her appearance changed. Her grandparents, Tricia and Brian Welty, became increasingly concerned. They reached out to child services and provided what they believed to be evidence that her situation was not improving. They shared photographs and formal complaints, hoping that someone would step in. But no action was taken. Investigators later interviewed Ryan Smith. He told them that he had reservations about how Kinsley was being treated in the home. He said he voiced concerns to Toni but did not contact authorities, explaining that he feared the entire household might be affected. He did not act further. Throughout this time, the household remained under the supervision of individuals already known to state services. Reports had been made, warnings had been issued, and yet the decisions on record continued to favor reunification. This chapter of the timeline reveals a broader pattern, one where professional oversight had weakened and choices were made that prioritized structure over safety. The risks were visible, but the responsibility to respond was deferred. Thanksgiving Day 2023 marked a shift in how Kinsley was treated inside the home. According to court records and documented interviews, Toni McClure began limiting her daughter's access to shared living spaces. Kinsley was moved into a small enclosed room connected to her brother's bedroom. What began as a response to household tension gradually became a long-term arrangement. Over the next 127 days, that room functioned not as a space of rest or recovery, but as a place of restriction. It was sparsely furnished, without proper accommodations for regular use. Statements gathered during the investigation indicated that Kinsley was not included in regular family routine. When meals were served, she was often excluded. Her siblings later said they were told she had been bad, a label used to justify why she wasn't at the table. This behavior became normalized. The other children noticed she was no longer playing with them, no longer visible in the same ways. In private conversations with child services, her brothers described hearing her ask to come out, but no one around her challenged the situation. Ryan Smith, who had moved into the home earlier that year, later admitted to investigators that he understood the situation was wrong. He said he feared that if authorities were called, all the children could be removed from the home. That fear, he claimed, kept him from speaking up. His inaction allowed the situation to continue without outside interference. According to official records, there were no reports, no welfare checks, and no notifications submitted during this period. By the time winter set in, the pattern had become routine. Within the home, the decision to isolate Kinsley had been accepted by the adults and witnessed by the children. It was never reported. It was never reversed. It became part of the household's rhythm, and across 127 days, the opportunity to intervene was missed again. On the afternoon of April 9, 2024, the Indiana Department of Child Services conducted a scheduled visit to the home of Tony McClure. The purpose of the visit was unrelated to Kinsley. It was to follow up on a separate case involving a newborn who had tested positive for a controlled substance. According to official records, the visit was completed without incident, but Kinsley was never seen. When asked about her whereabouts, Tony told the caseworker that Kinsley was staying with relatives. She gave no specific names or address. The explanation was accepted without verification, and the visit concluded. It would be the last opportunity to intervene. Just a few hours later, at approximately 5:15 p.m., a 911 call came from the same home. Tony now claimed that Kinsley had recently returned from staying with her biological father, Bradley Welty, and had suddenly become unwell. Emergency services were dispatched immediately. First responders arrived and located Kinsley inside the home. She was non-responsive. Immediate medical care was administered, and she was transported to Riley Hospital for Children. Despite continued efforts by medical professionals, she did not recover, and she passed away the same day. Medical staff became concerned. There were clear signs that Kinsley's physical state did not align with the story her mother had just given. Her appearance and overall condition raised urgent questions. An autopsy was conducted and found indicators consistent with prolonged nutritional neglect. Kinsley's weight was recorded at 21 pounds, comparable to the average for a child half her age. That same evening, hospital reports were filed. Law enforcement was notified. The timing of the earlier CPS visit just hours before became a critical part of the case timeline. Kinsley had been in the house all along. Authorities now had to determine not just what happened that day, but what had been hidden for weeks and why no one had been able to stop it. When police launched their investigation into Kinsley's final hours, they began by questioning the adults present in the home. Tony McClure was the first to give a statement. Her account pointed elsewhere. She claimed Kinsley had been staying with her biological father, Bradley Welty, for over 2 months and had only just returned to the home that day. Detectives quickly found inconsistencies. Tony could not provide an address. There were no recent calls, no text messages, no visits, nothing to confirm that Bradley had been involved in Kinsley's care. When investigators reached out to him directly, he confirmed he had not seen his daughter in a long time. With that claim debunked, Tony revised her statement. She admitted Kinsley had been at home the entire time. She explained that the decision to keep her in a separate space began months earlier and was, in her words, a form of discipline. She acknowledged the setup had continued through the winter and into the spring. Ryan Smith, Tony's boyfriend, was also interviewed. He admitted he was aware of the situation and said he had expressed concern to Tony, but chose not to contact authorities. He acknowledged that he had entered the room only once during that period and that Kinsley rarely left the space. Amy Holly, Tony's mother and Kinsley's grandmother, initially denied any involvement. But when investigators examined Tony's phone, they discovered a series of text messages that changed the direction of the case. Digital records uncovered extended conversations between Tony and Tammy, showing a pattern of planning and coordination. These were not isolated texts, they stretched over several months. In them, Tammy provided advice on how to manage Kinsleigh's behavior. The tone was harsh and dismissive, painting the child as a burden rather than someone in need of help. The messages also revealed that Tammy had actively worked to shield the situation from child protection services. She warned Tony ahead of scheduled home visits, helping ensure Kinsleigh wasn't seen by caseworkers. When asked about these exchanges, Tammy confirmed her role in keeping the child's condition hidden. This level of collaboration went beyond neglect. It reflected intentional effort to conceal what was happening. Prosecutors later used these messages to support their position that the choices made inside that home were not made in panic. They were planned, repeated, and executed in silence. The digital trail provided a rare and unfiltered glimpse into the mindset behind the decisions. Trust, when used without accountability, can become dangerous. And in this case, the absence of oversight didn't just allow things to continue, it became part of the problem. All three adults, Tony McClure, Ryan Smith, and Tammy Holly, were arrested and charged. Each had knowledge, each had opportunity, but none of them intervened. Following the arrests of Tony McClure, Ryan Smith, and Tammy Holly, prosecutors moved forward with formal charges based on each individual's role in the events leading up to the investigation. The charges were the result of weeks of compiled evidence, testimony, and digital records. Tony McClure faced the most serious accusations. She was formally charged with 3 felony counts: intentional harm under state law, unlawful confinement, and failure to provide proper care and supervision. The Marion County Prosecutor's Office announced that it would seek a sentence of life without parole, citing the extended timeline and deliberate concealment of the situation. She was assigned 2 public defenders, Dina Martin and Cherie Connor. As of now, Tony remains in custody awaiting trial. No sentence has been handed down yet. A jury trial is scheduled to move forward in the coming months. Ryan Smith, who was living in the home during the timeline in question, was charged with 3 counts of neglect and 1 count of unlawful confinement. While the evidence did not indicate he initiated the decisions made, prosecutors emphasized his awareness and his conscious choice not to act. His bond was set at $50,000, 0 cents, which was later posted. He is currently out on bond and awaiting trial. The charges carry significant penalties, though no formal sentence has yet been issued. Tammy Holly, Kinsleigh's maternal grandmother, was charged with failing to report a known risk to a minor and contributing to an unsafe environment. The case against her was supported by text messages, showing she was aware of how the situation was being handled and that she took steps to help conceal it. She remains under court supervision while her case proceeds. As with the others, sentencing has not yet occurred. Each defendant appeared separately in court for their initial hearings. During these sessions, the charges were formally read, their rights were reviewed, and each entered a preliminary plea of not guilty. Trial dates have been set for late 2025, pending further developments. In court, prosecutors emphasized that this case was not about a single decision, but about a pattern of choices made over time. Each defendant had insight into what was happening. Each had the ability to step forward, and according to the evidence presented, each chose not to. For nearly 5 years, Indiana's Department of Child Services had a case file open with Kinsleigh's name on it. During that time, the agency was involved in multiple placements and assessments. Reports were filed, family members raised concerns. But despite repeated interventions, the system's default policy remained the same: reunification. According to state records and family accounts, the agency was contacted on several occasions regarding Kinsleigh's living condition. Her paternal grandparents, Tricia and Brian Welty, submitted requests asking that she stay in their care. They cited concerns about her well-being and expressed doubt that the environment she was being returned to was appropriate. Still, reunification took precedence. This wasn't a case of the system being unaware, it was a matter of institutional design. In Indiana, as in many states, child welfare protocols place strong emphasis on restoring family unity. The goal is to help families overcome challenges and reunite. But sometimes, that approach is applied even when concerns continue to surface. After Kinsley's case reached the public, Indianapolis City County Councilor Josh Bain publicly called for a formal review of the department's handling of her file. He urged lawmakers to look into how reports are weighed, how cases are reevaluated, and whether reunification policies are being used in cases where protective measures might be more appropriate. Several advocacy groups responded, adding their voices to a growing call for policy review. These organizations pointed out that this wasn't just about one child. It reflected a larger issue seen in cases across the country where early signs are acknowledged but follow-up measures fall short. What followed was a renewed push for reform. Lawmakers began discussions about establishing new criteria for high-risk reunifications, including independent oversight and clearer safety benchmarks before children are returned to previous placements. Kinsley's name is now part of that legislative conversation. A case study for how well-intentioned policies, when applied without full accountability, can lead to missed opportunities for protection, and a reminder that decisions made within systems must always include clear safeguards. The family, along with local advocates, continue to press for action. Their message is direct. Change the process so that children are seen not just as part of a system, but as individuals whose safety must come first. And make sure that when red flags appear, they're not just documented, they're answered. On April 18, 2024, just over a week after authorities began their investigation, Kinsley was laid to rest in Morgantown, Indiana. Her burial took place at East Hills Cemetery, where family members and close supporters gathered to honor her. A heart-shaped headstone now marks her final resting place, bearing the words, "Too precious for this world." The phrase is simple, but it speaks to something larger. A life that should have continued and a future that should have been protected. Kinsley's case has since become more than a local tragedy. It's become a call to action. Her story is now part of an urgent conversation about how communities, institutions, and individuals respond to risk, and what happens when those responses fall short. If you're watching this, you are part of that conversation, and you have the power to be part of the solution. If you ever see something that doesn't feel right, don't dismiss it. Speak up, report it, ask questions. You never know when your concern could be the moment that changes everything. If you care about creating change, support efforts to strengthen child safety policies. Push for accountability, transparency, and consistent follow-up from those responsible for protection. And if Kinsley's story has stayed with you, share it. Share it respectfully. Share it so that silence doesn't take root in other homes where it shouldn't exist. To those who've watched, engaged, and stood with us, thank you. Every share, every comment, every moment spent listening adds light to the places still hidden in shadow. Let Kinsley be remembered not just for what happened, but for the change her story can help create. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.